Happy January 19th, 2026, and happy Martin Luther King Day. I am working on a few different things. Again, I've got 1,000 thoughts flying through my head at any given minute this week. And I'm really trying to get some practical advice for what to do if and when this comes to your communities. So I should have one or more videos with that really as the focus here once I can get the scripts kind of reined in a little bit, a bit more cohesive. Today is hopefully not one of the last times we get to celebrate Martin Luther King's birthday as a federal holiday. Um, it's probably the most impactful observation of this day in my whole life. So, what I want to do today is read to you three different passages from Dr. Martin Luther King's letters from Birmingham Jail. Okay. So, a bit of context about the letters. These were written by Dr. Martin Luther King after he was arrested for participating in organized protests against the racial segregation and systematic brutality that is being inflicted upon the people of Birmingham. And here's the first passage. Moreover, I am cognizant of the interrelatedness of all communities and states. I cannot sit idly by in Atlanta and not be concerned about what happens in Birmingham. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Never again can we afford to live with the narrow, provincial, outside agitator takes. Anyone who lives in the United States can never be considered an outsider anywhere within its bounds. This one to me doesn't require a whole lot of analysis, and I think it's very directly applicable to what's going on in Minneapolis right now. If there's one shout out I can put out here, it's that no, this is absolutely true. It is absolutely forever going to be true. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. The second passage that I want to look at here starts. In any nonviolent campaign, there are four basic steps: collection of the facts to determine whether injustices exist, negotiation, self-purification, and direct action. We have gone through all of these steps in Birmingham. There can be no gainsaying the fact that racial injustice engulfs this community. Birmingham is probably the most thoroughly segregated city in the United States. Its ugly record of police brutality is widely known. Negroes have experienced grossly unjust treatment in the courts. There have been more unsolved bombings of Negro homes and churches in Birmingham than in any other city in the nation. These are the hard, brutal facts of the case. On the basis of these conditions, Negro leaders sought to negotiate with the city fathers, but the latter consistently refused to engage in good faith negotiation. So let's kind of break down those four steps that Dr. King outlines. Determination of whether injustices exist. Much as Birmingham was obviously problematic to spurn the reaction that spurned these letters, the federal response in Minneapolis is a gross overreach of federal power, and injustices do in fact exist. We now live in the age of cell phone cameras and social networks, and we haven't gotten quite to the age where people distrust all media because of things like the proliferation of AI. But I think it's very important in this moment that we do pay attention to this passage. Negotiation is a big one here because Dr. Martin Luther King was going through the same things that we're going through in Minneapolis. As he lays out in the second half of this passage, there was good faith negotiation, but only on one side of the situation, and it wasn't the side of the state. That's exactly what we're going through now. Our elected leaders have been trying to negotiate to stop the cause of all the unrest in Minnesota, which is directly and unequivocally the ICE and DHS occupation of my state. But there is no good faith negotiation coming from the occupier. Self-purification is described in a bit more detail, a few paragraphs down, but the gist of it, as I understand it, really does have parallels with Minneapolis as well, especially in the wake of George Floyd. Self-purification refers to essentially taking a deep breath as somebody who knows that injustices are going on, whether you're the direct victim or not. Self-purification is going to be the process of determining to you clearly what is wrong. State it, make sure that you understand it. And then how can you fight back? Self-purification in this context really looks at violence or non-violence workshops that were conducted in Birmingham for a lot of the demonstrators leading up to the arrests that were made. And that same commitment to nonviolence is something that I see completely and ubiquitously here in the sort of preparation or reflection, truly that self-purification that we as a community have been trying to do in the wake of our previous very racially injustice motivated events here in Minneapolis. I think that one we have a natural predilection for. And so it leads us into the last, direct action. I won't go too much into direct action, what we should be doing, what the term means, the extent of it, the severity of it. I think that there are a lot of interpretations there, and I think it's a topic worth going into. But in this case, we can see and we know that direct action led to arrests. And in Minneapolis, we're seeing direct action lead to, detainments. People are not getting arrested or charged with crimes. They are being detained and beaten with no record of that happening. Part of the self-purification process is making sure that if you're going to go advocate for your neighbors, you're ready to accept that that may happen to you. All right, let's go to the last passage I'm going to be reviewing today because I think this one is absolutely critical and a bit on the nose here. We should never forget that everything Adolf Hitler did in Germany was legal. And everything the Hungarian freedom fighters did in Hungary was illegal. It was illegal to aid and comfort a Jew in Hitler's Germany. Even so, I am sure that had I lived in Germany at the time, I would have aided and comforted my Jewish brothers. If today I lived in a communist country where certain principles dear to the Christian faith are suppressed, I would openly advocate disobeying that country's anti-religious laws. This one hits pretty closely for the direct comparisons to Hitler's Germany, which are incredibly true right now. The perception of legality versus illegality, as really declared by worldly establishments, and a professing of action, a very certain and morally unambiguous stance on what Dr. Martin Luther King would have done that should serve as an example for all of us. So these are all from Dr. Martin Luther King's first letter from Birmingham Jail, and they really focus on very direct and poignant comparisons between what he was going through and what we're going through in Minnesota. But it's not kind of in rereading it, today and leading up till today, my knowledge of the letter from Birmingham Jail is basically Martin Luther King saying, hey, the real problems here, the real problems here are not the fact that these brutalities exist. We know that they do. We know that they're being covered up. But perhaps the most frustrating, the most demoralizing part of continuing to try to fight a struggle for justice and equality is the disingenuous support from white moderates. And this one rings as true today as everything we just covered in those first three passages. And the entire second letter goes into more poignant and articulate detail than I will have time to cover today. But I think it's very important for us to realize that that part of the letter is also being mirrored today, because what he's talking about are concessions that, say, white business owners have made, removing segregation, enabling signs in their windows, and other peaceful, seeming fruits of negotiation that are just rolled back, that are unfairly and unjustly and without good faith rolled back to make it so that apparent progress is made. When a strike or a protest or a movement finally does gain visibility, the mechanism of the established system is to placate. It is to try to establish peace in the moment. It is to make any concessions. But it's also to dial back those concessions. It is to prevent a movement from being truly successful in enacting change, rather giving people the appearance of making change in a way that is not genuine. That, to me, that overall message, that warning of placation, that frustration with the white moderate systems that are in place, that's still the heart of this letter. And so I would implore you today to go read the full letters from Birmingham Jail in their entirety, and do really reflect on what they mean to you